scholarships and to get a start in their own lives and their own development at Monroe College. Monroe, of course, is a school that is well known here. Many of our people have been educated at Monroe, and I would really want to extend the warmest congratulations to Shervin and his entire family. Let me also congratulate Miss Tony Nisbet, who won the Masters Women Bikini Fitness category over 35. This is news to me. I didn't know that Tony was over 35. She looks no more than 20. But over 35 at the IFBB Florida Classic held on June 26. Now, Tony has introduced a whole new sport, so to speak, to Nevis, and that is bikini fitness. And she has been traveling across the region, and now it appears internationally, to compete. And she has won the IFBB Florida Classic held on June 26. And so I extend the warmest congratulations to her for the discipline and, of course, for her participation in this sport. Let me congratulate also Miss Hosier Pluck, who was selected for the Leeward Islands Under-17 team, which participated in the recently concluded Cricket West Indies Under-17 team tournament in Trinidad. Let me move on quickly. The first item on my agenda is jobs. And we have seen a job report from Social Security that gives us a snapshot of the position as of April 2022. We are still awaiting the formal actual figures as of June. But as of April, I believe the press and members of the public would be pleased to know that on the island of Nevis, the number of employees increased by 3.5% over last year. The number of jobs in Nevis increased by 5.9% over the same period last year. The gross monthly wages increased by 12% over the same period in 2021. The gross monthly wages per employee increased by 8.1% over that same period in 2021. And the gross monthly wages per job increased by 5.7% on the island of Nevis over the same period in 2021. Now, those are the categories that are measured by Social Security. As I always like to point out, there are still people who are self-employed or people who are perhaps in the informal sector, informal economy, whose job numbers would not be recorded at Social Security. So I would think that this would suggest that there are, in fact, even more jobs being created than are reflected here. Let me use the opportunity to continue to encourage our people to register with Social Security, to pay their Social Security, and to put themselves in a position where they can benefit. Too many of our people, particularly self-employed, work for many years, and then when they run themselves into any difficulty, they have no recourse because they have not paid Social Security. See it as an investment and go in and register today. So again, the employees in Nevis, the number of employees has increased by 3.5%. The number of jobs by 5.9%. The gross monthly wages by a massive 12%. The gross monthly wages per employee by 8.1%. And the gross monthly wages per job by some 5.7%. I think that those figures are welcome figures, and they show that we are moving in the right direction coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. By way of comparison, on the sister island of St. Kitts, the number of employees on St. Kitts declined by 0.1% in 2022 over the same period 2021. The number of jobs in St. Kitts increased by 0.5%. The gross monthly wages on St. Kitts increased by 4.4%. The gross monthly wages per employee increased by 4.5%. And the gross monthly wages per job on St. Kitts increased by 3.9%. For those who may want a side-by-side comparison, the number of employees in Nevis increased over the period by 3.5%. The number of employees in St. Kitts declined over the period by 0.1%. The number of jobs in Nevis increased by 5.9%. The number of jobs in St. Kitts increased by 0.5%. The gross monthly wages on Nevis grew by 12%. The gross monthly wages on St. Kitts grew by 4.4%. The gross monthly wages per employee in Nevis grew by 8.1%. The gross monthly wages per employee in St. Kitts grew by 4.5%. And the gross monthly wages per job in Nevis grew by 5.7%. The gross monthly wages per job in St. Kitts grew by 3.9%. So that gives you a snapshot of what we have been doing on the island and what, of course, our brothers and sisters on St. Kitts have been doing as well. Again, those are the latest Social Security numbers up to April of 2022. Let me shift from jobs to tourism and to report that the Nevis Mango Festival, which was held from July 1st to 3rd, appeared to have been a tremendous success. From all reports, it was incredibly successful, especially the festival dubbed For the Love of Mangoes, which was held at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park on Sunday, 3rd July, and where, I'm told, approximately 1,000 persons attended. The Nevis Tourism Authority and its partners would like to thank the general public for this overwhelming support of the Mango Festival. We extend congratulations to Devon Libert, the NTA CEO, and his hard-working staff at the Nevis Tourism Authority for their efforts in hosting this, another successful Mango Fest. St. Kitts and Nevis Restaurant Week, that was held from July 14th to 24th, during which more than 50 restaurants across the Federation participated in presenting creative and tasty sweet potato-based dishes. Sweet potato was the local item of choice in relation to these dishes. Nevis this year had the highest level of participation of restaurants. This year we had 25 restaurants participating, up from 15 in 2019. The Ministry of Tourism, in collaboration with the Culturama Secretariat, also hosted a night market on July 9th, which featured a wide variety of vendors showcasing art and craft as well as local cuisine. The large and receptive crowd also witnessed the Culturama Soca and Kaiser Monarch tents. Again, we thank the public for their involvement and their participation. Let me switch to education, a topic about which I am very animated always and very supportive. We had on the 18th of July a very significant ceremony at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park. And that is when the Ministry of Education hosted a graduation to recognize students who passed the pilot test of Chinese as a foreign language exam. 17 students sat the exam and 14 of the students passed, 8 at the Novice 1 level and 6 at the Novice 2 level. Highest commendations must be given to Miss Shomia Thompson, a student of the Charlestown Secondary School, who sang both the national anthem of St. Kitts and Nevis and, importantly, the national anthem of the Republic of China, Taiwan. She rendered the Taiwanese national anthem with sheer precision. Now, I'll be the first to say I didn't understand a word that she sung, but the ambassador for Taiwan sat next to me, and he said in his comments that he was moved to tears at the precision with which young Shomia sang their national anthem. Commendations also to young Thierry Trotman and Ewin Telemark, who presented a bilingual speech with the fluency of Taiwan natives. I must take this opportunity to extend our heartfelt thanks to Ms. Shi Shen, Mandarin teacher, who came to Nevis at our request in October of 2020. She has worked with students and adults to teach Mandarin as well as the Taiwanese culture. A special thanks to my dear friend, His Excellency Ambassador Michael Lin, and the government and people of Taiwan for partnering with us to provide access to this important resource and for increasing the potential for greater success for our students and people as they acquire a new language. Incidentally, ladies and gentlemen of the press, this is one of the achievements of which I am exceedingly proud, because on taking office in 2017, I indicated to the Ministry of Education that we would want to introduce Mandarin as a second language, having since time immemorial had only French and Spanish being offered in our schools. And we approached, through our diplomatic channels, the government of Taiwan they responded positively. And as a consequence, they sent us Miss Shen, who is a properly trained and qualified language teacher. And she has embedded herself in our community. And to be there and to hear our children speak Mandarin, recite in Mandarin, sing in Mandarin, I was very impressed. And just so the public knows, if they may ask, why Mandarin, I'm advised that Mandarin is spoken by over 1 billion people in the world, representing over 11% of the global population. It therefore means that to engage with that language gives our young people an opportunity to engage with the world in a much more meaningful way. It also means that a lot of our youngsters who apply for scholarships to study in Taiwan, that they are able, when they get there, to hit the ground running, because they don't have the limitations that others may have of having to learn the language for a full year before they can start their studies. And so we think it's a win-win situation. I would really want to commend the government and people of Taiwan for continuing to be such a critical partner to the development of St. Kitts and Nevis. The Department of Education would have hosted their annual prospective teachers course from July 11th to 22nd. There were 42 participants, and the course, of course, provides insights into the teaching profession and the basic skills which teachers should possess. Let me congratulate all the participants and the entire team at the Department of Education for staging another successful prospective teachers course. Teachers who would have participated, you will be hearing, of course, from the Education Department in terms of your hiring, your placement, as the case may be. And again, I thank those who have stepped forward and offered themselves to become teachers on the island of Nevis. 7 primary school students are recipients of the 2022 Naomi Daniel Brown Scholarship, sponsored by the Nevis Association of Washington, D.C., NEVDC. In a short ceremony at the Malcolm Guichard Recreational Park on July 21st, the most improved grade 6 student from the Joycelyn Liebert Primary School and 6 grade 5 students from the public primary schools, who were identified as the most improved at their respective schools, received financial awards totaling $1,700 US. Thank you to Mr. Anthony Pemberton, President of NEVDC, and all members of the association for their continued contributions to our island and for continuing to honor the late educator par excellence, Mrs. Naomi Daniel Brown. Let me turn very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, to agriculture. The Department of Agriculture will tomorrow, Friday, 29th July, host this year's Fruit Festival. It will be on Market Street in Charlestown. The agro-processing units, as well as the Lawrence and Parry Agricultural Depot, will join various vendors to showcase and sell fruits and fruit products. We want you to come out and witness this incredible sale, exhibition, expo, whatever you want to call it. Why? There will be a mango ice cream competition. 4 entries, and the winner gets an ice cream blizzard maker. There will be a cake competition. Plain cakes, we have had 8 entries. The winner will get an Ace Cool cake mixer. There's a dark fruit cake competition. We've had 4 entries. The winner will get a KitchenAid tilt headstand mixer. And cheesecake, 7 entries. And they will get a Ninja creamy milkshake maker. The best decorated cake receives a cake decorating airbrush kit. I never knew until today that you could airbrush cakes. Apparently you can. So we would like to thank our sponsors, of course, the Nevis Island Administration, but also the Finnish Touch and ECGC through their local distributor or supply office. The Fruit Festival and competitions take place at Market Street, Charlestown on Friday, July 29th. We ask you to come out. It promises to be a fun-filled event. Incidentally, while I am speaking about fruits, and of course, yet another aspect of our thrust into greater food security, let me continue to invite the general public who have the opportunity, particularly our press members who come from St. Kitts, to take an hour or 2 and visit the fruit orchard at Indian Castle. It is 35 acres. That is the brainchild of the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, and it is really transformative in terms of what they're doing there. Thousands of coconut palms have been planted, thousands of other fruit crops, guava, mango, and various fruit crops. And I believe that it is a welcome addition to what we are seeking to do here in terms of food security. I cannot mention that project and not mention also Banky, Mr. Ronald King, who is the man who has been there managing that project and really doing an excellent job. I am told by the minister that the plan is to extend that fruit orchard to an additional 30 to 40 acres. And so we will end up with almost 100 acres of land there under cultivation for fruits and contributing to greater food security. We know, for example, that the disease lethal yellowing would have destroyed virtually all of the coconut palms in Nevis. And so to see the government leading the initiative to replant thousands of coconut palms, I think that that is a good thing. And all of us now see the coconut vendors on Nevis and on St. Kitts popping up and offering their coconut water, jelly water as we would say locally, and some of it we understand is being imported from islands nearby such as St. Vincent and other such places. And so we want to be able to deal with that, to bring Nevis back to the days when we had an abundant supply of coconut and an abundant supply of coconut water, which is now in high demand. Let me just quickly point out on the issue of housing that we continue to be very proud at what we have referred to as the housing revolution that is happening here on the island of Nevis. For the very first time in the history of our island, we have housing developments happening simultaneously at Garner's, Madden's, Nisbet Settlement, Prospect, Craddock Road, Hamilton, and Rice's. That is unprecedented. And yet when we go around and we talk to constituents and we talk to the residents here on the island of Nevis, we hear the constant demand for more housing. Many of our young people are saying, I'm tired of paying rent. I'm paying $1,500, $1,700 a month for rent. I prefer to pay a mortgage. And I agree with them. The difficulty has been that the demand is vastly, vastly more than the supply. For example, I'm told that when we opened one of the recent developments, I believe the one here at Hamilton, we had, I think, just about 14 available lots. And there were over 50 applications for those lots. And so I'm asking our people to bear with us. I am reminding our people as well that private lands are available for sale on the island and that we have made it as convenient as possible because we have adjusted in terms of you buying a home in terms of not paying any alien landholding license fee if you are a non-national. So we are trying to make it as affordable as we can. We've also, of course, put policies in place as part of our response to COVID, which we are now extended to the end of this year, that we have removed the relevant taxes on building materials to make construction a bit more affordable. And so we are seeking to work with our people to secure housing, because housing is a critical need here on the island. And we encourage you to continue with that mindset that it is better to pay a mortgage than to pay rent. I like that very much. And when I hear that from young people, I am very much encouraged. The Honorable Alexis Jeffers has very quietly, in my view, led a revolution in housing here. And he has not only produced quality developments, such as that in Madden's, and we see now popping up all across the island of Nevis, but he has also been forward-thinking, and this government has supported him in that endeavor. And we are in the closing stages now of finalizing the acquisition of over 30 acres of land at Garner's estate, where we are concluding negotiations with the owners. We are concluding negotiations to acquire a substantial acreage as well at Wally, so that we can expand what we're offering there in terms of parking to our water taxi facility there. We have been forced to use the power of compulsory acquisition on some lands at Herbert's Beach, And those lands, I believe, somewhere in the region of 17 acres, were being sold to an investor, Miss Ann Bass of blessed memory. But we were concerned that it would have impacted the ability of the people of Nevis to access Herbert's Beach as we had hitherto been accustomed. And so Alexis Jeffers, as the Minister of Lands, would have intervened, and we would have compulsorily acquired those lands for the benefit of the people of Nevis, generations that are here and generations yet unborn. We are now to find the money to pay for those lands, and we are working on that. We are also in the final stages of some negotiations to acquire some lands for the expansion of the village of Barnesgut, a commitment that we would have made and a commitment that we are keeping. And so I want the public to understand that not only are we building homes, we are also seeking to add to the land stock that is available. St. Kitts and Nevis are different in the sense that in St. Kitts, of course, the majority of lands are government owned. That is not the case in Nevis. The majority of lands in Nevis are privately held lands. And so oftentimes when the demand for government housing comes to the fore in Nevis, we are forced to buy land from private individuals, as we did in Craddock Road, and as we did right here in Hamilton. We are forced to purchase lands and then turn around and use those lands to offer to our people in terms of lands for purchase and lands for development. It is a difficult process because our people sometimes, when they hear that government is the buyer, the price gets very pricey. Is that correct English? The price gets pricey. So we have had to deal with that, but I would want our people to be patient, to see that we are in fact trying our very best, but we have those limitations. We have also acquired some 6 acres just below the ball field, the cricket field in Brownhill, where we hope to be able to launch a new housing development shortly as well. So the government continues to make every effort to satisfy the increase in demand for housing, and I continue to encourage our people, those Nevisians and Kittitians who are here, but also those non-nationals who live among us, to invest. And a home is perhaps for most of us the most significant investment that we would make. My father, blessed memory, used to remind me all through life that rent is dead money. And this is not to knock those people who are making a living out of renting accommodation, but if you rent for 20 years, after 20 years you still don't own anything. And so we encourage you, sometimes it might seem difficult, but it is better to pay and own than to pay for 20 years and at the end of the day you still don't own anything. Let us invest. Get a home, get a piece of land, get a piece of the rock, so that you can have something to leave to your children and grandchildren. I move on very quickly to public works. They've been doing a massive amount of work all across the island. Commendations again to Minister Spencer Brand and his entire team at Public Works. As you know, we are currently undertaking 2 significant projects, the Butlers Road project, and since the last reporting period, the first asphalt layer was placed on the section of the main village road from what they call the Domino College to the range. And we have been paving an additional section of the main road from the range to the Charles's residence. We expect to apply the final layer of asphalt and the week ending tomorrow. The Bath Road project is the other significant project that is ongoing, and the Public Works has mobilized works to reconstruct property, fences and walls within the section of roadway between the old Maud Smith Preschool and the entrance road to the housing project. 3 walls on the western side of the road corridor are currently under construction. A significant amount of land acquisition was required at these locations, and I want to go on record to thank the landowners and the people of Bath for their positive cooperation with us. Now, what we have done over the years, instead of seeking to pay people for the foot or 2 sometimes of land that we've been forced to take to enhance the roadworks and the road network here, we have offered them instead to provide a proper fence. And so sometimes you see a nice wall fence where there was none before. It is not that we are simply spending money to do a wall fence. It is by way of compensation to people for having taken a small portion of their land. And that has worked really well. And I want to thank and commend the people of Nevis who, community after community, have seen the wisdom of that approach and have really been willing to cooperate with us rather than forcing us to find the resources to pay them for the bit of land. They've simply said, well, if you can give me a proper fence, and it's all good. And so we have had the cooperation of the significant number of residents, and we are thankful for that. Work on the reconstruction of the Methodist stone wall is continuing apace, and if you drive by the Methodist church in Charlestown, you'll see what we're doing. The welding and body repair shop at the government garage is now completed, and we would hope that that is to be occupied shortly. The department has also completed village roads at Malcolm Hill and is also overseeing the extension of the concrete village road in the Zion Housing Project. They also undertook the responsibility of grading and paving the roadway and bridge between the wards and Girl Guides building. Public Works has also organized and is overseeing works currently being undertaken in Lower Stony Grove. The works they involve the widening of the roadway at the back of the Claremont housing development. To facilitate road widening, some 5 property fences have been demolished and reconstructed at a setback from the original location. I spoke the last time about a new fuel depot canopy and dispenser system at our garage and repair shop. That is now complete, and we have received official confirmation from Sol that they will now be using that new fuel dispenser system. Just to remind you that the reason for this was for us to modernize what was on offer there, for us to keep better track of how much fuel is going into the tanks and how much fuel is being dispensed, because government vehicles get fuel at this particular depot. So it will allow us to control in a much more efficacious way what happens at that particular location. I'm also pleased to advise the people of Church Ground that after some weeks, the culvert that we were doing there and the road construction in that area is now almost complete. During this week, we will pave the road carriageway and do some minor cleanups, and then that will be it. I want to thank them for their patience with us over these past few weeks. We also want to commend the Public Works team, what they call the building divisions, because you see they have road construction, but they also have people who are in the building division. And they have been very involved with Culturama, preparing the cultural venues, cultural complex, cultural village, as the case may be. They have, I'm told, erected a VIP area. They've been moving stages around, and every year they provide this type of support under the leadership of Alistair Thompson. I want to thank them very much for their role. The last time we reported that the concrete for the footing for the Cotton Ground playing field retaining wall, that will be poured within a matter of days. I'm now pleased to report that the wall project is really proceeding nicely. Using local contractors from the Cotton Ground community, we are, as I like to say, building Nevis by us and for us. The block works have been substantially completed. The contractor is in process of placing the columns for the wall. Now, you may well ask, why am I reporting on a wall during the Premier's press conference? It's really because that wall for many years was not only an eyesore, but a serious risk to the people, particularly the youngsters of Cotton Ground. And we made a commitment to get it finalized, and I'm happy that we are at a stage now where we are solving that long outstanding problem. I would want to thank Latoya Jones, who has, as a community advisor, been very instrumental, calling every day about this particular project. And we are happy that this project now is in a stage of advanced completion. I believe that this is what we are here to do, and I would want to assure the people of Cotton Ground that we are already finalizing plans to have stands and bathroom facilities also done at that particular ground. And so we hope that not only there, but all around Nevis, we will continue to enhance our sporting facilities and our sporting grounds. While I'm on the issue of sporting facilities and sporting grounds, let me remind the members of the press and the Nevision public that we are also in the process now of lighting all of the sporting grounds on the island of Nevis, all. And for those that have already lights, we are changing them now to more fuel efficient. Is it fuel efficient? No, they don't use fuel. What is energy efficient? That's the word I'm looking for. Energy efficient light bulbs. And so this is a project that is ongoing, and we hope will be completed in due course. But that will really enhance our sporting infrastructure in a significant way on the island of Nevis. I have a couple notes on water, but I will only mention one for today's purposes. You may have heard me quite some time ago talk about my own efforts in negotiating some desalination plants for the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis with the government of the United Arab Emirates. I was able to successfully negotiate 2 such plants, one for St. Kitts and one for Nevis. But regrettably, it took far too long to get the ball rolling in relation to the actual implementation. I'm happy today to advise that there has been some progress on the implementation side. And just so you know, my role as foreign minister was to negotiate and get them to agree to do it. Thereafter, it would be for the various ministries, the line ministries, to implement. And so in St. Kitts, it was the Ministry of Works, in Nevis similarly. And we have been held up for some time, but I'm told there's now progress, and that solar water desalination project. And that's important because it's powered by solar. And so the idea is that, of course, it ought not to be impacted adversely by the increase in cost of electricity. So that particular project, the contract has been awarded to Mascara Nouvelle Technologies for the EPC, that's the Engineering, Procurement and Construction, for the Nevis Solar PV Desalination Plant. We eagerly await further work and development on this project. Why is this project important? It's important because particularly during the dry season, you know, we continue to have problems in terms of ensuring that our people have a regular supply of water. Nevis has done incredibly well. In fact, I believe it was only for a very short 2 weeks or so, possibly 3, this year, that we have had some disruptions in water supply on Nevis. But all across the island of Nevis, we have had adequate water supply over the years. And we have invested significantly in upgrading our storage capacity, in upgrading our distribution capacity. In fact, we have spent over $40 million in that vein here on the island of Nevis. We've also upgraded significantly our availability of water when we invested in a treatment facility, a water treatment facility for a well at Hamilton that was there, a high-producing well. But because the water had too much manganese in it, we could not put it into the system because water in our system has to meet minimum World Health Organization standards. And so we invested in that plant, treatment plant, and we now have over an additional 200,000 gallons of water going into our system as a result of that investment. So we have done a tremendous level of work. We continue to work not only on the storage and upgrade of distribution. Some people, for example, in the various communities say, oh, this road is taking far too long to build. The reason sometimes is simply because when we're doing roads now in Nevis, we are also upgrading the water lines. A lot of villages in Nevis where people say they suffer from low water pressures because you have maybe just a 1-inch or 2-inch line coming into a community. And as more people build and as more people come onto the system, the pressure goes down. So we are upgrading all the pipes now across the island in various communities to 4-inch mains. And as a result of that, we hope to again offer a far better and more regular and more reliable supply of water to our people. So I wanted to make that note about the desal, because desal, even though it's a small plant, will add to the availability of water. And it makes sense because we're surrounded by ocean. So if we could find a way to convert that to potable water, particularly if we can do that for the hotel sector and those that are along our beaches, I believe that that would do very well for the island in terms of our security in water. Water is life, and we have to do all that we can to ensure that we continue to deliver for the people of Nevis. The Labor Department had a career fair 11th to 14th of July under the theme Skills Development and Opportunities for a Brighter Future. There were 42 participants who were students of the 4th and 5th forms of the Charleston Secondary School, Gingerland High School, and the Nevis International Secondary School. And we have been pushing very much this idea of job fairs because it prepares our young people for their careers after they leave school. Let me commend the Nevis Labor Department for a very successful Career Fair 2022 and say thanks to all the presenters and all who had something to do with this important exercise as we continue to empower our youths. We thank the businesses who are working with the Labor Department in securing places for the participants, because one of the aspects of this was that we encourage businesses to allow the youngsters to have an internship with them. And I'm advised that to date, some 18 businesses have responded positively, and therefore some youngsters are going to get some exposure to business. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm wrapping up. But let me, before I go, speak to two matters. One is the increase in food prices at supermarkets. Again, a complaint that we have been getting. The economy of Nevis, like the economy of many of us in the region, is what we call an open economy. And not only that, but we depend very much on imports in order to sustain us and our daily lives. One of the biggest concerns that this government had during the COVID-19 pandemic was the fear that the Port of Miami might close. And we understood that if that happened, then there would be no food on our supermarket shelves because the majority of our food is being imported. That is why our response was significantly skewed towards agriculture and food security. That is why we gave out free fencing wire. We prepared lands for farming for free. We provided free seeds and seedlings and fertilizer, free water. We extended this not only to traditional farmers, registered farmers, but also to backyard farmers. That is why we've invested in what I spoke about earlier, a 35-acre fruit farm at Indian Castle, which is to be expanded. The idea really, ladies and gentlemen, was to emphasize that we must grow more of what we eat and eat more of what we grow, because both go hand in hand. And I continue to applaud our farmers, again under the leadership of Alexis Jeffers, because one of the things he would have done is distributed free shade houses, I believe some 6 of them, valued at over $60,000 each, to farmers in Nevis to expand their production. We are seeing more and more youngsters, university-educated youngsters, getting involved in farming, but using technology. So not the fork and hoe of yesteryear, but they're now using shade houses, hydroponics, and using that technology. We see now some of our farmers who are packaging and offering their produce to the supermarkets and on the supermarket shelves. I was in St. Kitts recently. I saw Paris Greens, which is a youngster here in the Prospect area who's using shade house technology to grow greens. We know, of course, about A1 Farms and others who are producing young Gager, Anthony Gager, and others who are using technology to produce food. I would want to continue to encourage that. I also want to continue to encourage our people to buy local, to buy from our farmers, because it's one thing to ask our farmers to produce, but it makes it a sense if they do so, and then our people still prefer to buy imported food when they don't know where that imported food comes from or how it was grown. We don't know if there are hormones in it, we don't know if there are pesticides, we don't know if there are chemicals in it. And so when we have local food, we know that it is organically grown, it is local, the value is good, it is fresh, it is healthy, and we invite you to buy local. Now this government, in its thrust for greater food security, has also built the Lawrenson Perry facility at Prospect. And that facility, again the brainchild of the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, was designed to create a storage facility so that our farmers can bring produce there and have it stored. And then our marketing department in agriculture then has the responsibility of selling that product. And that is why when I mentioned that tomorrow there's a fruit festival in Charlestown, the Lawrenson Perry facility will be brought into play, because a lot of what they have there will be made available in Charlestown. So I am laying it out to say that we have been trying to respond even before this escalation that we're seeing on supermarket shelves in terms of prices. Ladies and gentlemen, the only answer for us in terms of escalating food prices is to grow more of what we eat and eat more of what we grow. It may sound basic, but really and truly, think about it. The food that you buy in the supermarket is being grown by somebody. It's then being processed and shipped, and we buy it and consume it. We have fertile soil here. We have the capacity and the agricultural technology at our fingertips. Let us seek to grow. And it could be in your backyard. If you can grow some tomatoes and some cucumbers in your backyard, what does that mean? It means that when you go Rams, you don't have to buy tomatoes and cucumbers. So we can definitely do more. Our animal farmers, we supported them again during COVID with free feed. Again, ECGC of St. Vincent and the Grenadines would have partnered with us. Our fisher folk, we supported them with free fish pot wire and reduced costs on additional rolls of fish pot wire. And we have continued to advocate for greater food security. I'm asking our people again, instead of the imported fish, buy fish locally. Instead of the imported mutton and pork and beef, buy that locally. Our abattoir is doing an excellent job in providing choice cuts of meat that you can purchase. They're also providing things like smoked chicken, hams, and various forms of processed meats that you can purchase. We have to support our farming community and encourage them, because farming is a business. In fact, it's big business, and they must see it as such. But that for us is the only way. And the reason we have come to that conclusion is because my government has sought to respond to the rising cost of food by offering to remove all taxes, import duties, whatever they may be. And it came as an eye-opener to me when the main supermarkets and I met, main supermarket proprietors and I met, and they were to advise that whilst those initiatives sounded good and perhaps would make a minimal difference, that in truth, their main difficulty was that every week they ordered supplies, the prices were going up. So food pricing escalating is not just here, but across the world. And if you watch American news and you watch the various news from around the world, you see that it is a problem that the world is now facing. Again, when these things happen, we must turn to ourselves. We must be more resilient, and we must seek to eat what we grow and grow more of what we eat. Let me also speak very quickly. I did say two last matters. The increase in NEVLEC and electricity bills. Again, as we go around, we're knocking on doors because certainly we're in a campaign here on the island of Nevis. And we're talking, more and more of our people are complaining about NEVLEC bills and the increase in electricity costs. And all I can do at this point is really to apologize to you for that pressure that you're under. All of us are experiencing that pressure. I've asked NEVLEC, and they have issued a press release setting out how the fuel surcharge is calculated, because many people say the fuel surcharge is more than their consumption. And that is a refrain that we hear. And so they've set out how the fuel surcharge is done. They've actually put out a press release in relation to that. But what I thought was interesting is that NEVLEC has blamed the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict for the rapid escalation in oil prices. And when oil prices escalate, it means that the price of oil products, such as diesel, which we use to run the engines, that those also escalate. And the cost really escalates as a result. We see the bus drivers who have sought to increase their bus fares. Incidentally, I'm still seeking to meet with them. I have not yet had the opportunity because that increase had not been authorized by the government. There was no discussions with the government. And I want us to get back to a partnership with the Bus Association. So I'm making that appeal here again, that we need to meet to finalize these matters, because persons have naturally been complaining because some buses apparently have increased their fares, others have not. And so the public doesn't even know what the correct fare is supposed to be. But that's what happens when things are done sort of in the way that they were done, rather than in the usual collaboration with the government and with the sanction of the government. And so that is a matter that is still outstanding for us. But NEVLEC, you also see an increase in prices, the price of bread, the price of various products that use electricity in generating their products. And wherever electricity prices or oil prices go up globally, you find inflation happening as a consequence. So it is a matter, ladies and gentlemen, that we are seeking to grapple with. Again, the ultimate answer is for us to finally harness our renewable energy supplies. to do more in terms of our wind, to do more in getting to the goal line in terms of geothermal energy, and that will insulate us from these rising costs and conflicts across the world. Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Russia, any of these areas of the world have difficulty. We pay a price here even though we are far removed from that difficulty because oil and oil prices is a global commodity, and that is the impact that we have. Now, what has our response been? NEVLEC has implemented some initiatives to assist you during these challenging times. Since September of 2021, NEVLEC introduced the use of a 6-month moving average of the actual price of fuel to calculate the fuel surcharge. And the mechanism helps to smooth out the wide fluctuations in the price of fluid. NEVLEC has, by so doing, sought to create a cushion so that the customers do not have to absorb the full impact of the fuel surcharge. Incidentally, I think that I should point out to you that that policy of NEVLEC has, in the last year, cost NEVLEC in excess of $3.1 million by way of subsidy. So even though the bill is high, and we acknowledge it is high, and we apologize for it being high, it would have been even higher had NEVLEC not absorbed some $3.1 million of that. To put it in context for you, ladies and gentlemen, the average price of fuel has moved from $7.98 per gallon in January 2022 to $14.68 per gallon in June 2022. So in just that 6-month period, the price has increased almost 100% in terms of fuel. So it is an untenable situation. And whilst that war in Ukraine continues, we do not see any immediate fix to this problem. So we're asking our people to conserve electricity just like we ask you to conserve water when you can. We are, of course, pursuing our renewable energy supplies. We have asked NEVLEC, and they have since September 2021 introduced this rolling 6-month average. But the cabinet in Nevis has also gone further now, and we are committing to NEVLEC $1.75 million per month, specifically to try and cushion this shock that NEVLEC itself is experiencing. And so the fuel surcharge, as a result, we are capping the fuel surcharge at 65 cents. And that is significant because as of today, NEVLEC is advising that the actual fuel surcharge is 90 cents. So we are trying to cap it at 65 cents by the government injecting $1.75 million, per month into NEVLEC in order for it to pass on that relief to customers. Now, fair share has become a big issue in this campaign. And many say, oh, what is that? And what does it mean? I believe that it is a matter now of public knowledge that our citizens and residents who live on the sister island of St. Kitts are not paying the fuel surcharge. And you may ask, well, how is that possible when in Nevis, fuel surcharge is higher than the electricity bill? And it comes back to the very argument that we keep making, that it is from the citizenship by investment monies on St. Kitts that fuel is being subsidized, electricity is being subsidized, and the people over in St. Kitts. So imagine you are a citizen of this country, and if you were to leave Nevis and relocate to St. Kitts, overnight your electricity bill goes down by more than half because the government over there is subsidizing the fuel surcharge. If you're in St. Kitts and you move to Nevis, a citizen of this country, overnight your electricity bill goes up by more than 50% because over here we do not have the capacity to do the same. And that is why we keep saying the people of Nevis need, require, and demand their fair share of the resources of the country so that we can offer the relief to the island of Nevis and to the people in Nevis, just as our brothers in St. Kitts are getting that relief from our passport money. And I will leave that there in the context of the fuel surcharge and what it is we are seeking to do. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe I will end it there and invite your questions. I believe that the press is going to be mercifully brief today, since you know that I have a campaign to win, and so I urge you to be brief and to be merciful to me today in terms of time. Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning to you.
Maybe then you should have taken that into consideration and kind of capped the opening speech.
It
So
was
give us a
capped.
chance to ask our questions.
It was capped. It was really capped. There was a lot more I could say.
All right. Okay, Hewlett Department of Information. Okay, I'll keep it brief as per instructions. When did you say the NEVLEC capping of the fuel surcharge will begin? And is there a time frame on that? Is it for 6 months? We'll see how it goes. Is there any more information on the desalination project, like the scope of it, and any kind of timeline? And since you mentioned election, and only for that reason, can you speak to the state of readiness of your party? And there have been, I think, one or two or several polls allegedly done in St. Kitts and Nevis. What is your take on what has come out of those alleged polls? Thank you.
The capping of the fuel surcharge, I think initially the cabinet had committed to do so for 3 months, and then we will assess at the end of 3 months where we are in terms of providing that additional money to NEVLEC to try and keep it at 65 cents. The desal plant, I do not have any more information at this point, except to say that it was a project whose genesis has been now some years ago, and we are grateful that there appears to be some movement on it, and I will undertake to get additional information to the press in relation to that. Elections and state of readiness, I think that people would know that the Big Blue Machine is always ready. We were ready for a local election where we anticipated that we would have been able to win all 5 seats on the island of Nevis, but since this federal election has intervened, we expect that we will win the 3 seats, retain the 3 seats that we have, because the people of Nevis have clearly demonstrated that they want a voice that is strong and unified in Bastille to represent them. They have clearly demonstrated that they're satisfied with the level of representation that they have thus far received in Bastille. And I believe that the stance that we have taken in saying that the people of Nevis demand and deserve their fair share and their fair shake in this country, that is a message that has resonated. I really have not paid any attention to the polls. Polling, as you know, it seems to me is an imperfect science here in the region. The more you pay, the better the poll. And so we have decided that we will not waste our resources in the CCM on polling and pollsters and pundits. I call it the 3 Ps. We instead talk to our people. We knock on doors. We engage with our people. To me, that is the best polling that one can do. I don't believe, and I've never believed, that people can waltz in here from distant places and in exchange for hundreds of thousands of dollars tell us how we are going to vote. You also may not know, Ms. Hewlett, because I don't know if St. Kitts from whence you hail is similar. But Nevis people like to fool people. So a lot of times when the pollsters call, once they know that it's a poll, they start to tell you all kinds of things. And so when they run away with that, you know how many times my phone rings and it's a voter who say, well, they just call me in and I tell them this, or I tell them that. Let them run with that. It's very difficult. I see in America people walk out of a polling station and they say they have what? Exit polling. How did you vote? Oh, I voted for the Republican. How did you vote? I voted for the Democrat. I ask the division how they vote. I tell you that's none of your business. What you want to mind my business for? So polling and the science of polling here in our culture, in my view, is not helpful. And so when I look at some of the poll results and the predictions, I just smile. Because every poll that I've ever seen in the history of politics since I've been involved say that Mark Brantley is going to lose. Everyone. And every election result, my margin of victory is bigger. So it's either that something goes wrong on election day, or it is that the pollsters have no idea what they're talking about. And so my view to the political parties who seem to be getting some fillip or some confidence from polls, CCM doesn't do polling. Well, let me put it differently. CCM doesn't pay for polling. We go out and we test the temperature of our people by constantly being in touch with them, because those are who we serve. And that is what we have done. So I pay no attention to the pundits, the pollsters, and the polls, because at the end of the day, for me, it's a colossal waste of resources. And we prefer to use what the resources we have to take our message into the communities and to talk to our people. And that has always been our position. I know that that does not make me the friend of the pollsters, but I see a lot of them running around the region. Matter of fact, a name was given to me the other day who apparently is embedded with our friends in the NRP Nevis here. And this name was given to me, so naturally I ran the name through my database to do some checks. And the result that came back was that this individual was neither pollster nor pundit. This was just somebody who says, somebody down here willing to pay me some money, let me come. And we have to be careful, you know, that this old-time description of an export, you know what the old-time description of an export is? Somebody from overseas with a briefcase. Have to be very careful of it. A lot of people come from overseas with a briefcase, say they come to tell you how to win election. And they have absolutely zero track record. In this CCM, we say we are the experts because we are the people living here, working here, and we are the ones who engage with the people of Nevis. And so, short answer, I don't pay much regard to them. So whoever wants headlines and want to interview pollsters who are paid, to me the big question to every pollster should be, who's paying you? You know, realize they never tell you that. They should start with a disclaimer. I was paid by the PLP to do this poll. Now the PLP is going to win the election. At least then the public understands what is being said. But they come as if it is science, when in fact it is bought and paid for. So I am not too interested in that. I simply say to the people of Nevis to ignore the noise and focus. And on August 5th, I believe the people know what they will do already.
Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning.
And other members of the press. My name is Shamika Bajin of Von Radio. Question 1. Are there any ongoing plans to resuscitate air traffic at the Vance Amri Airport? Question 2. Are there any difficulties with nationals getting into Nevis, whether they are returning for the Culturama Festival or for the upcoming election? 3. We've heard you mention the harvesting of fruits and or vegetables. What about eggs? Our local eggs. I think you said some time back that the purchasing of eggs overseas are quite expensive. And right now the supermarkets are purchasing, I think, medium-sized eggs from overseas because of the cost. So do we have any plans on having or creating more egg farms to suffice the needs of the general public? And my final question, in light of your numerous efforts to get Nevis's equitable share of the CBI's proceeds, and now the CCM is in an alliance with PAM, alias Real Unity. Bearing in mind the two parties were part of the Team Unity construct, what makes the Real Unity movement deserving of an opportunity to serve the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and thus Nevis finally receiving what is rightfully ours? Thank you.
Well, let me start with the last question first, because it's a very good political question. And to say to you that I think at the end of the day, our people must look at those who are contending in this election. We must look at the track record of those who are contending. We must look at their past. We must look at their plans. We must look at whether or not they've performed, whether or not they have delivered. Do they have the necessary experience? And that, I think, is very important. You asked a good question. What should our people expect in terms of this, and how should our people almost be assured that this will work this time? And the short answer is that there is no assurance. And I'm not going to stand here and say to you that I can give you a guarantee that this will be the position, because I think I did that before when Team Unity was put together. The principles, the core principles of Team Unity was such that the idea behind it was to guarantee that our people would move forward together and that all of our people would be able to share in what the country has to offer. Just as all of our people are asked to share in the burden, so too we said our people should share in the benefits. Clearly, that was derailed by one man and his approach to it and his abandonment of the ideals to which we agreed. And we are here today because of that. Had the promise of Team Unity been kept, had we proceeded along the lines that we had agreed, the country would not have been in this crisis today. We would have proceeded on those core principles. The people of Nevis would have got what belongs to them, not by way of favor, but because they are full citizens of this country and entitled to the full fruits of their citizenship. And so, for me, it is difficult to say to anybody that this is a guarantee. What I can say to you is that there is no way that the island of Nevis, in the current construct, to be in the federal cabinet and to be in the federal government except by way of coalition, because there are only 3 seats on Nevis. So there's never an opportunity for the island of Nevis to form a federal government on its own. We must have a partner if we are to play a role in terms of the federal government. And it is only when we are in government, when we sit in cabinet, difficult as it may be sometimes, that we can bring benefits to this island of Nevis. And to me, that is why people are asked to vote. You're not voting for me because you think I wear a nice suit. You're voting for me because you think that I can do the job. And doing the job means that there must be some benefits that flow to the island of Nevis and thereafter to everybody who's on the island. That is why people elect representatives. You want people to go there and represent you. So when I hear the chatter in some quarters that some are saying that if elected, they don't want any portfolio, they don't want to be involved in the cabinet process and have the work associated with being elected, I know that those are not serious contenders. And so I think that we need to look carefully at who's on offer. And to say that at least the CCM has come and has made a clean breast of it. We have said we were in a relationship which was not working. We have explained why it did not work. We've explained the considerable efforts that we made to try and correct course and get the leadership to correct course. But when we recognized that there was no appetite for doing that, and it appeared that the approach taken by who I am referring to as the former Prime Minister, because he's done, we all know he's done. I think the approach that was taken there was one that, listen, if I can't captain the ship, I'm going to mash up the ship. I'm going to sink it. And that is really what we saw on the 10th of May. I would want to go on record yet again to point out that the Honorable Sean Richards and I, representing the majority of Team Unity, 7 out of 9 seats, did not demand of Timothy Harris that he resign. What we demanded of him was that there be a correcting of course, that the ship had run aground and we wanted the ship to be refloated and to get back on course with the principles that underpin Team Unity. And he refused. Sent an 18-page epistle. I'll know I'm not finished reading it yet, because I can't understand that response that came to legitimate concerns being raised. Imagine, if you will, Ms. Budget, that we had an ambassador for St. Kitts and Nevis at the United Nations, the most significant ambassadorial post, who was on radio daily bashing members of the cabinet. This is our ambassador. And when that was put to Timothy Harris and said to him, this was not acceptable. I have been around diplomacy now for 7 years. You cannot have an ambassador for a country going after members of the government or going after anybody for that matter. This was not acceptable. His response was that the ambassador has freedom of speech. Well, that's an interesting response, because it means, therefore, that any of us could bash anybody else in the cabinet. When we talk about these legions of fake profiles that he has working for him, and people close to him who are so bold as to write under their own names on social media, attacking constantly partners in Team Unity over their freedom of speech. So when you hear that even those basic things, an unwillingness to just pick up the phone, Patches, what you're doing is foolishness, go sit down. Or maybe that is not press conference-like language. Ambassador Library, what you're doing is nonsense. Could you please go and take a seat and desist from your foolishness, which is leading to frictions and difficulties within the Team Unity construct. That's what a real Prime Minister would do. Simple things. When we say that it is not proper that you have such a concentration of power, already the power of the Prime Minister, but you're the Minister of National Security, you're the Minister of Sustainable Development, you're the Minister responsible for Finance, and all the levers. You can't get a single person on the STEP program or on the PAP program or into the peace program or into any of these social programs unless the Prime Minister says so. And then when you tell your constituents, as he said to the cabinet, these programs are closed, they cannot admit of new membership, the same constituent come back later and tell you, well, how you tell me that? And I go and talk to the man and I go on the program now. These were the things that we had to deal with. And so we sought, even in the face of all that, for compromise, because we understood that the country was bigger than any one individual. And the response that we got, Ms. Budgeon, was to mash up the government, to dissolve the parliament, and to decide that we will have to face an election. And I believe that it is a matter for the people of Nevis, but this election has been staged in the heart of our Culturama. The first Culturama that we're having after the COVID-19 pandemic, when many of our people were looking to come home and to revel as we celebrate our cultural heritage here on the island of Nevis. Dr. Harris, in his wisdom, has decided that this is the time that we should be out campaigning. So I have not even been able to go to a Culturama show yet. I do believe I will be in the long jam, though, because we have a blue troop that is coming down the hill. But that is the reality of what we face. So I am not going to stand here today and say to you that I can guarantee that this will be the result. What I can commit is that just as I'm fighting now, I will fight, and the team that I represent will fight for the best interests of the people of Nevis. I remind you that we did so when we were in opposition, when we faced a Labour NRP regime in Bastille back in 2015. And many would have thought that, well, you're now in government, so you'll lay down. I said no. Yes, we will try to compromise. Yes, we'll try to negotiate. Yes, we'll try to work out problems. But once we realize that there's no compromise, there's no effort to correct course, we did what we had to do. And we're here now coming back to the people of Nevis and saying to them that we are the right team. Send us back to do the job that you know we can do. You asked about eggs. And I am happy to say that for some years now, Nevis has been fairly self-sufficient in egg production. As a matter of fact, we met when we got into office a practice of allowing individuals who were not egg farmers to import eggs into the Federation, into Nevis, I'm sorry. And we put a stop to it. Why? Because people were bringing in eggs to compete with the local farmers who were producing eggs. And so what we said was, we will still import eggs, but only through the main supermarkets, or alternatively, if the egg farmers themselves want to import eggs to supplement what they're producing locally. And that has worked in terms of giving them that room to grow and develop. The problems that we had recently is that the quantity of production locally had fallen dramatically below the demand. And that is why we had to open up to allow more eggs into the island as a consequence. We normally really only see large-scale importation of eggs during Christmas season and times like those. But generally, for regular consumption, the egg farmers in Nevis do an excellent job in sustaining what we have here. Is there room for more? Absolutely. And the government has always encouraged those involved in agriculture, the business of agriculture, to come forward and we provide those necessary concessions and incentives to encourage them to be a part of the food security thrust on the island of Nevis. We also have big plans not only for the egg industry that you asked about, but also for the chicken, meat, poultry, what I believe they refer to as a broiler industry. And already we've identified lands, we've already identified some investors, outside investors who are interested, but also local investors. And the idea is that the government will construct a central slaughter facility, and then persons who are raising chickens will bring to that facility, just as we do our abattoir now. But this will be a dedicated facility just for chicken. And the idea is that we would like to produce local chicken, that our people can feel comfortable knowing that it is without the steroids and hormones that we hear are injected into chickens elsewhere. And here we have local meat. And again, another string to our economic bow, because we see that as generating employment and generating a new sector here on the island of Nevis. So it's all part and parcel of the overall plan for greater food security. Nationals coming home for Culturama and to vote. Thus far, we've had a few hiccups, but not too many. Of course, I expect that most people coming in to vote are going to be coming in at a later stage, but people are trickling in for purposes of Culturama, for their summer vacation with family, as the case may be. I had a report just this morning that a few persons had missed their flight because they could not get the authorization to come on time. And I continue from this rostrum to appeal to those who are manning the portals in St. Kitts to ensure that there is no manipulation of these portals. The CCM has written through its chairman, the Honorable Troy Liebert, to the Attorney General to indicate to him that we consider this a very serious political issue, because we are concerned, based on the rogue behavior that we've already seen in the country, that some will seek to deny some people coming in, but approve other people coming in. We have had a very cryptic response to say that the matter was considered by the task force and that recommendations will be made to the cabinet. I assume they mean the remnants that they have masquerading as a cabinet. We'll wait to see what decision they pronounce. But this is a matter in which we are prepared to go to court if necessary, because we cannot use these artificial protocols in order to deny our people the right to vote. We have gone past now the pandemic, when I stood here every month and begged people to vaccinate and begged people to do those necessary things to protect themselves. I am still doing it, but we now understand that the world has moved on and we have to live with COVID. Our vaccination rate is one of the highest in the region. Our mortality rate is one of the lowest in the region. Here on the island of Nevis, we have been credited with one of the best management of COVID-19 in the entire region. And yet, we are seeing islands with much lower vaccination rates, countries with much lower vaccination rates, which have done not half of what we've done in managing this pandemic, removing these restrictions and allowing people to travel again. Bearing in mind that our primary industry remains tourism, travel into is critical. And I am told that a lot of groups, large groups, because of the frustration of filling out, imagine you have a group of 100 that are coming, you have to fill out all of these forms, get everybody tested, get them tested within the requisite time, get the test results uploaded, wait for a response. And that is creating difficulties. So I continue to call on those in charge to relax these protocols and remove these entry requirements. They have outlived their usefulness. And we all know it. And any effort to continue to cling to it must now start to attract some questions of whether the motives are sinister. And that is why the CCM wrote, and we await the response. So for us, at the moment, we have had pockets of difficulty, people missing their flight. I can tell you that even the music festival in St. Kitts was impacted. One night I was at the music festival, I had to be in a corner with my phone and my other ear cupped to prevent the music from preventing me from hearing. And it was a family who were telling me that they had to fly early in the morning and they could not get the authorization. At that late hour, I had to be calling to ask, what is the problem, what is the problem? Eventually, the lady got the authorization for herself and 2 young children while she was in the line. Now, could you imagine the stress? We all know the stress of travel, especially you're traveling with a family, young people, young children, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting for this authorization. And so these are some of the problems, and I feel that it is time, and we need to accept that certain things have simply gone past their sell-by date. It now becomes purely a matter of control, because there's no more health crisis, in my view, in the country. People are vaccinated, people have been doing the right thing. We continue to encourage our people to do the right thing. And when I looked at the thousands that were at the music fest, I look at the crowds, I look at the thousands that went to 5-in-1 Fete, and all the other fetes that we've had here on the island. I consider the thousands that we expect in the Culturama Wet Fete. When is Wet Fete? When? Saturday. You say the young people would know. Saturday. That it is time for us to be realistic and stop pretending that this has anything to do with health. This is now a question of control. And I am very, very uncomfortable with the idea that Timothy Harris and his PLP machinery would be in charge of who's coming into the country, who's allowed to come, when they themselves are in a contest. That is like you're in a fight and the referee or the umpire is playing on one team. That is really what it's like. And that is why we have written and said that this has to be looked at. And we are prepared to move the High Court if necessary in relation to this matter. So far, minor glitches. But if these glitches start to become too consistent, we'll have to deal with it. While I'm on the topic of people coming in, it came to my attention that there was some nefarious move afoot to try and close the Vance Amory Airport. And I have been very agitated about that. No discussions have been had with me as the Premier of Nevis. But this came to our attention, and it came to our attention by a side wind. But it came to our attention, and the reason that was being advanced, absolutely foolish, is that we don't have a fire tender, fire truck, at the Vance Amory Airport, big enough to handle certain types of aircraft. Now, you know why I say this is absolutely foolish? Because the fire truck is there. Fire is a factor of national security. The Nevis Island Administration has no responsibility or constitutional authority over fire. Federal responsibility. And the fire truck, I'm advised, is in St. Kitts. The fire tender is over there. They have not sent it to Nevis because they say we must build a garage first. Now, I never know fire truck could catch cold. So I don't understand that you would threaten to shut down the Nevis Airport because of a fire tender that is necessary to be there, that is already in St. Kitts, would not be sent over because we have not built a makeshift shed to put over it. That doesn't make any sense. But that is the level of disregard. And that is why I've said there will be no closing of the airport in Nevis. The Premier of Nevis, it will not happen. And all who are imagining in their minds that they have that power, I am here to say today, it will not happen. Send the fire truck over and allow the airport to continue to function as it's supposed to function, rather than this puerile behavior that we see happening, where it seems like because Mark Brantley and the CCM have said we don't want this Prime Minister anymore, that the whole island now should be subject to spite, bad mind, and downright wickedness. That is my concern. I had one conversation with the Permanent Secretary here. I said, well, it's a simple matter. Can the fire tender fit into the garage that is currently there? The answer is yes. Well, if that is the case, move out the old fire tender and move in the new. Case solved. Somehow that was not part of the analysis. And so we have written indicating that we are moving out the old fire tender and the space is now there for the new fire tender. Since it's garage you want, garage you get. Send Nevis fire tender. Let us get the Vance Amory Airport functional. And I'm saying these things because I'm not going to take any blame. I am willing to take blame for what I do. But when you see these machinations happening, you must treat them for what they are. Treat them for what they are. Threatening to close down the airport because of a fire tender that is already here in St. Kitts. Just put it on the boat and send it over. And that's part of your responsibility. But oh no, Nevis must build a garage for us. As if there's a problem at the airport, is the garage going to save people? Is the garage going to put out the fire? If, God forbid, there's a difficulty with a plane over there on the runway. It's not the garage can't move, the garage can't spray water. It is a fire tender that we need. And if you even had to put a tarpaulin over it, it's the fire tender that we need. Not the garage. But you see, again, the blame shifting. Oh, no garage, therefore the fire tender can't come. Well, we have moved out the old one out of the garage. And so we are saying no, that the fire tender can come because there's housing for it. Since housing is the problem, we've provided housing. And I have no doubt in my mind that all of that was part and parcel of the election gimmickry and shenanigans, because they probably assume that if they can close off the Nevis airport, all traffic would have to be routed to RLB, where they have absolute control. The Nevis airport, as we know, is under the control of NASPA, not the St. Kitts Authority. And so that appeared to have been the ruse that they've been attempting to use my former Ministry of Aviation to apply pressure to the island of Nevis yet again in circumstances which are absolutely foolish. And so I want to make it very plain here. You asked me, lastly, about resuscitating air traffic at the Van Samre International Airport. I am passionate about that. The asset there now is an asset that is not yielding any benefits to us, other than the occasional charter flight and FedEx and those types of delivery flights. And so we need to find a way. I have not said much on it, but we do have a plan to develop that facility. The plan is to convert it into a private jet facility with the ability to attract regional traffic. It is a plan that has been discussed with various stakeholders, including the Four Seasons Resort, who has indicated to us that from time to time they have groups who can charter what they call a regional jet. The regional jets are smaller. They seat maybe 98, sometimes up to 102, 104 people. If you've ever traveled, for example, from New York to Canada, the regional jets they use for those routes. Travel within the United States, they use a lot of those regional jets. American Eagle, some of those planes. And so the regional jet is now, for example, what is going into Anguilla and what is going into Dominica from Miami. So the feeling is that we would be able to accommodate those, accommodate the regional traffic, and we are already in advanced discussions even now with St. Martin to get a bridge between St. Martin and Nevis using an airline company, I think, called St. Martin Airways, because as we know, Winair pulled out some time ago. We are in advanced discussions with a few individuals who have an interest in financing a particular project. And I believe that you live here, so you would have been subject to the propaganda, as all of us have been, that we have somehow sold the airport. I want to emphasize that that is abject nonsense, and that what we are doing is engaging with various persons. We have not signed any agreements yet, but we're engaging with various individuals about the possibility of a partnership. I believe they call it a public-private partnership to develop the Van Samre International Airport, not to compete with RLB or with St. Martin or with Antigua, which are all very close. So we're not expecting to get British Airways landing. That is not the ambition. The ambition is that we can capture the private jet traffic and capture the regional traffic as well, and capture the traffic that we get from our hotels when they're chartering for groups coming into the Federation. We also expect that we might be able to get private jet traffic for those who own homes in the Crystal Harbor region. It may surprise many to know that Crystal Harbor is closer to our airport than it is to the St. Kitts airport. And so our feeling would be that people might be willing to land here, take the water taxi, and be home in a much quicker fashion than had they landed at RLB. So we are committed to expanding that infrastructure and to partner with airlines to come. But we will be looking at the regional carriers primarily, not those that are coming internationally. Any other questions for me?
Yes, good morning, Devon Cornelius, WinFM. I have a few questions from SKN Vibes, German Able of SKN Vibes. What is the island's economic outlook for the remainder of the year? Sorry. Can you provide the inflationary rate on the island of Nevis, and what new policies or initiatives will the NIA seek to institute to cushion the increase? Now that the attention has been turned on the ravages of COVID-19 from COVID-19 to rebuilding, what are the gains and losses that the NIA has found coming out of the pandemic? Has the NIA taken on any additional debt resulting from COVID? And what are the levels of import and export during that period? And these are my questions, just two. What is the status of the Alexandra Hospital? And with the news of countries in the region, such as St. Lucia, stepping up or doing monkeypox surveillance, what is happening at the local level? Thanks.
Why, Devon, Mr. Cornelius, sorry. If I'm allowed to make a joke at my press conference, we have so much monkey here. I don't even know. I believe all of us should be immune from monkeypox by now because the monkey population here is so high. But our health professionals continue to monitor the situation in relation to monkeypox. We have not yet received from them any sense of panic or hysteria. Well, let me not use that language because they never panic. But we haven't received from them that there is any need for heightened concern at this point. So we will continue to monitor. As you know, the region operates with PAHO and CAFA, the regional institutions, and so we expect that the same standards will be applied across the region in terms of monitoring. We have not, however, as I said, had that alarm bell rung for us just yet. Alexandra Hospital updates. I made a note here that I expect Mr. Cornelius to ask me about the hospital. And so on my way here, I called and I was told that the windows are being installed. We're now over 60% complete on that. We should, they say, expect to have all the windows installed within the next 2 weeks, and that the painting of the structure should start as well within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we are really moving to a stage now of having that outward appearance of the hospital. As you know, work has been ongoing on the interior, and I am advised that we have received from the consultants over 500 pages of specifications for the interior, and that work is done, and that those 500 pages of documents are going to be with us, I think, today or tomorrow, being shipped via courier to us. And so we will now know exactly what the specifications are as we continue to build out the interior of that facility. So I am happy to report that the things such as windows and painting and all that is clearly on track and should be done very shortly. I think once that is done and you drive by, the building starts to look to a state of greater completion on the outside. And that is what we're seeking to achieve. And then, of course, the majority of the work then will turn to tiling and paneling on the inside, as we have already started. The economic outlook for the rest of the year, I think we are cautiously optimistic, Mr. Cornelius. We are cautiously optimistic because our tourism season this year has been much longer than anticipated. As a matter of fact, up to this week, which is the end of July, we're approaching now, we still have groups that have come and are at the Four Seasons Resort. And of course, we expect to have a boost from Culturama, albeit we have the election in the middle of that. Well, election itself will bring a boost too, because we expect greater consumption, greater activity, you know, as people go out and attend the meetings, etc. So we expect that the prospects are relatively good. My last update from the Ministry of Finance officials, which I received just about 3 weeks ago, suggested that we were on the right track. We were marginally ahead of projections in terms of revenue, and behind in terms of expenditure. So it means that that is a good place to be. Of course, let me hasten to say that we would have done that during the better days, because we understand that the tourism industry contributes most during the winter months. So from January, February, March, April. But as I said, this year we have gone much longer than anticipated. And we expect that that trend, we hope, will continue. So our prospects are good. The movie business that we introduced into the Federation, they are about to embark on filming a major film here, what they call their first action film on the island. So we anticipate that that too will generate some well-needed activity across the island of Nevis. So as I said, my answer to that is that we are cautiously optimistic. Inflationary policies, it's difficult for us, Mr. Cornelius, as a small island to set out policies to impact inflation. We, for example, don't have control of a central bank that we could deal with. Was it referred to monetary policy, where we can talk about interest rates and all of that? I see in some countries, in fact, this morning I saw on CNN that the U.S. Treasury, or Federal Reserve, whoever does it there, that they've increased interest rates now twice in a short space of time, creating history in an effort to battle with inflationary tendencies there. The island of Nevis doesn't have that capacity, clearly. So what we have been trying to do is what I've laid out earlier in terms of providing some concessions, in terms of providing some relief, and in terms of saying to our people on food, for example, let us grow more. Let us eat more of what we grow and grow more of what we eat. In terms of electricity and the like, let us change behavior, let us conserve. We have argued, for example, that as our people have become more affluent, you have a situation where you have several people in the same household having cars. Some of them going to the same location, Charleston. And so we're saying, carpooling might be a way to save on fuel. Different ways that we can operate. But I think in terms of setting some policy to deal with inflation, that is difficult for us given our constraints as a small government. You asked questions about jobs. Rebuilding after COVID, and what are some of the gains and losses. I think the gains are that we become more resilient. I think that our people have decided that we must do more to help ourselves. We're seeing more small businesses popping up. We're seeing more effort in agriculture and growing more of what we eat. I think those are good trends that we should encourage. Of course, those came about in part because of policy prescriptions of this government, including the $5 million entrepreneurship fund that we would have declared, and that has been subscribed heavily by our people, offering to women and youth up to $100,000 in seed money to start small businesses. We've had good response there. We're also, of course, seeing in terms of new jobs being created. The movie industry, as I've suggested, has created some well-needed jobs as well, and some well-needed transfer of skills, as our young people now get the opportunity to be part of the machinery of making movies. And I want to again go on record to thank MSR Media and their tremendous effort and commitment to the island in that regard. The main thing that I think we've experienced during COVID has been job losses. In April of 2019, Social Security data suggests that the island of Nevis had the highest number of jobs in the history of Nevis. April 2019. By April 2020, we had lost over 1,000 of those jobs. Matter of fact, I think the figure was closer to 1,500 of those jobs. And so we are still recovering. April of 2019, we had over 6,000 jobs being recorded for that month here in Nevis. And we are still struggling at around 5,700. So it means that we still have not regained what we have lost. And so we must continue to make the effort to create jobs and to do more in terms of job creation. Did we incur additional debt? The short answer is yes, particularly during the COVID period. We are very proud of the fact that rather than retrenching workers, laying off people, we preferred to incur debt to ensure that our people were paid on time and in full. And I continue to say it's a badge of honor that this government did not lay off anybody, that this government ensured that every single public servant every worker in every statutory corporation, every pensioner received their payment in full and on time. Even during the pandemic, when things were locked down, people were not at work, and clearly there was no revenue coming in. And that is why when I hear the question asked sometimes, oh, what you did with money that you got from St. Kitts, from the Citizenship by Investment Program, I said we paid salaries too. Because our salary per month is almost 9 million EC dollars. That is what we have to find each month to pay salaries and wages and our pension commitments. And we were getting 3.75 million per month from St. Kitts. So there was a gap there of over $5 million each month with our economy closed. So clearly we had to borrow. But it was debt, in my view, which was necessary. And I want to thank our bankers for being flexible with us and allowing us the courtesy of being able to access sometimes over our limit in terms of overdrafts, but they didn't bounce our checks, and for that I'm grateful. Any more questions for me?
Good morning, Premier. Glenn Bart, SK Newsline.
Good morning, Mr. Bart.
Piggybacking on some of the things you've said this morning in regards to the need to create more jobs, for example. The world has changed, the region has changed, lots of things have changed. So it seems to me that it requires a sort of new dynamics in terms of researching what is available that Visions can get involved in. You mentioned the movie industry. I remember you spoke about marijuana, the interest in marijuana. But what about things like IT? And how far can we go with that in terms of engaging our young people in that kind of endeavor? So I'd like you to comment on the strategies that you will use going forward in terms of generating new revenue sources for the island of Nevis. A lot of being said. You have PAM and CCM in this current coalition, and there is, I guess, among yourselves high confidence that you all will win the elections. But elections there are people turn out to vote, and when the votes are counted, that's when we know exactly who wins.
Sure.
So, my question to you is this. If, in the event that PLP wins the election on St. Kitts and can form the government, what would be the Nevis Island administration's approach, particularly from the CCM-led Nevis Island administration, in terms of getting that CBI revenue sharing issue resolved with the federal government? How are you going to approach that? That's my question. Thank you.
Mr. Bart, first of all, I owe an apology because I believe you and I were supposed to speak, and it hasn't yet happened. So I apologize, and I hope it happens soon. PLP wins the next election. I think that we will see pigs fly before that happens. That, from my mind, is far-fetched, but since you want me to engage in fantasy, let me just say that we have in Nevis been forced over the years to work with governments that are hostile to Nevis and hostile to the NIA. I will just remind you that in the period 2013 until 2015, that the NRP in Nevis was embedded with the Labour Party in St. Kitts and in government over there. And the hostility was quite significant. That is the period when we had our checks bounced, for example, at National Bank. And our public servants in Nevis were not paid on time as a result of that. So we have weathered those storms before, and I believe we are more than capable of dealing with those storms again if they were to arise. On the issue of our fair share of the citizenship by investment resources, we do not propose to relent on that. And we have already taken legal advice on this matter, that we are prepared to move the court, the High Court, if necessary, to seek redress on this particular issue. I would want the people to understand that this is not a political discussion or a discussion for political season. This is a fervent plank and position of the Concerned Citizens Movement and of this NIA at this time that I lead, that we will not accept a position where the people of Nevis continue to be denied their fair share of what is a national resource. And we are very resolute in that regard. And we will do all that is necessary, including moving the court, to get that share. Of course, as I said, your question is highly hypothetical, and I do not ordinarily engage too much with hypotheses and things that are purely within the realm of what if. But I'm confident, based on what I'm seeing, that this election on August 5th will be the last gasp of this PLP regime. And I'm confident that the country is going to breathe again and move on again in a way that unites us, rather than divides us. The divisiveness that we see now, I think, is unfortunate. We've taken several steps backwards. And it is time, I think, for all of our people to work towards unifying our people and unifying our country. And I am confident that our people on the 5th of August will do exactly that. If the PLP were to win any seats at all in St. Kitts, I believe that all the major political parties have already made it clear that they will not do business with the PLP, that they will not engage with the PLP. And that in and of itself speaks volumes. It seems to me that everybody else is willing to speak to each other, but nobody wants anything to do with the PLP. That level of toxicity that has been introduced into our body politic speaks for itself. This is not just CCM. PAM has said they don't want anything to do with PLP. Labour has said they don't want anything to do with PLP. And NRP that is involved with PLP is saying, don't tell anybody that we're involved with you. So there is clearly a situation where nobody wants to be publicly associated with the PLP. And that speaks for itself. It really speaks for itself. And so I don't see that there is any room for that kind of politics that the PLP has sought to introduce. When you have somebody who's clothed with the title of Prime Minister is going to say publicly that every dollar that Nevis gets is a dollar less for St. Kitts, who will say that we have no love for St. Kitts, we only want St. Kitts for St. Kitts money. That is what we want, to use St. Kitts. It tells me that he has no idea what it means to be Prime Minister of this Twin Island Federation. None. That is as stupid a statement as somebody saying that if Sandy Point gets a road, it is less for Keon or is less for Bastille. It tells me that the people of Nevis, in his mind, are viewed in a particular way, that what is done over here is somehow some generosity. And that is why when I hear Nevisians get on radio to say that Timothy Harris is the economic philosophy for the island of Nevis, it grieves my heart. It really does. Because I believe even the preschool children will tell you that's nonsense. So, we are where we are. We will fight this fight because it is a fight that is necessary. And I'm appealing to the people on August 5th to vote, and to vote based on the issues and to make their choice clear. At the end of the day, I think, Mr. Bart, if you've heard me over the years, I believe that the voice of the people is the voice of God. And once they have spoken, we will have to accept what they say. And once elections are free and fair, I am prepared to accept their verdict, because in them I put my trust. Not in polls, pollsters and pundits, but in the people of Nevis. And so I will leave that there. What are we going to do in terms of jobs? I believe that in this post-COVID period, that job creation is far and away the most important part of what we must do as a government, to create an environment here that we can attract investment and more jobs. We have quite a few things that we are working on, and quite a few things that are already in train. I have not come to say much because I know that our people are understandably skeptical, particularly during a political season when you start to talk about this project and that project coming. And so I think that I will allow some of those things to unfold organically as we go past August 5th. But I can say, however, in terms of the movie industry, we want to see that grow. We think that we're on the ground floor. There's more that we can do. And we are now attracting attention from other movie makers who want to come here to film. And we think that that's a good thing. On the fashion and luxury industry, so to speak, we are already again attracting attention there. We had started pre-COVID, we were gaining some momentum. Then that derailed during COVID. But recently, we have seen again luxury brands coming to the island and doing filming here. I think recently we would have had some photo shoots here being done over the course of several days. We as a government feel very strongly that we must do more for our small businesses and our small business development. I had a meeting with members of the Dominican community, not, let me be careful, members of people from the Commonwealth of Dominica, and there are over 100 of them living here. And when I spoke to them, many of them I did not know personally, but I met with them, those that attended. And it turned out that many of them are self-employed. Many of them are using their talents to create something for themselves and their families. I think we need to encourage that more. And we need to move away from the mindset that the government has a job for everybody, because that is simply not possible. Small businesses are often underestimated in terms of what they do for the economy and the advancement that they can create for the people that are working there. And as I like to say, every person who opens a small business is one less person looking for a job. So we need to do more. We started with this $5 million fund, which was a response during COVID. We want to see that expanded. In fact, we have recently launched the joint manifesto with PAM and the CCM. And in that, you would have seen $100 million committed to that same process of small business, incentivizing small business development. And that, I think, is going to be important, that our people start to refocus and instead of looking at jobs, start to think, what can I do? So many of our people have so many skills that can be leveraged into real money making if they are interested in going on that road. And our people are very innovative. Just the other day, I saw a car passing me at night, and there was a blue light in the windshield, and I thought initially it was a police car, but when I look, I see it say Uber. I said, Uber? Only to realize that some youngsters here have perhaps taken the name of Uber. I hope that they are not running themselves into any legal difficulty. But there's a full-fledged service, apparently, I'm told, in Nevis, where people are using to call Uber and to get transported from point A to point B, just as they do in the United States and elsewhere. And in fact, I found it interesting because when I found out who it was and I spoke to the chap, he said that, yeah, he's an Uber service, but, you know, sometimes he will carry 3 and 4 passengers at the same time. So if you call and he happens to be on the way, he just pick you up too. So, but that's the innovation. Taking an idea that you see elsewhere and saying, listen, how can I do this? I was called by a youngster recently. He said, listen, I want to show movies on the big screen at the Malcolm Gishard Park on the lawns, so that people can come in, spread their blanket, you know, young people who have a date night and they want to come and spread their blankets, have a bottle of wine and watch a movie on the big screen. And these are ideas. I see young people now doing picnics. I saw some photos the other day I couldn't believe. Going to various sites here, creating a whole scene, a whole atmosphere for your wedding or for your birthday or whatever it is. And that is the type of innovation that I believe is going to happen and will happen. IT, you're absolutely correct. As a matter of fact, when you started to talk, I scribbled IT even before you said so, because that is where the world is going. And we have to be a part of it. And part of that world is also the world of cryptocurrency. I have said that this has to be a part of our financial matrix going forward, because it is across the world becoming more and more acceptable. Even here in St. Kitts and Nevis now, Bitcoin Cash is accepted in many places. You simply take out your phone, you swipe it, and the money comes off. And you get your goods and services and you go. So I think that it is to our peril that we ignore developments such as those. We need to get on board. Regulated, absolutely, it has to be regulated. We have to find a way to ensure that bad actors are not using these facilities. But we have to start to think about how cryptocurrency can be a part of our economic recovery and our economic matrix. We have committed, and I'm sure you've heard me talk about this before, to a coding academy here on the island of Nevis. We have already started. We've had a few workshops already in terms of teaching our young people how to code. Now, please don't ask me any questions about the coding thing, because I don't really understand it myself, speaking for myself, but what I do know is that coding is part and parcel of creating apps, creating various programs, software development. It is part and parcel of gaming, the gaming industry. And we have some very good indications that if we're able to develop a cadre of coders here, that we can use that to leverage Nevis and to get big companies to use those youngsters who are coders to assist them. And I feel that that is, again, one of the ways that we can participate. India, for example, of course, I can't compare us to India. India is a vast country. But India, for example, has gained a reputation for its IT prowess and its coding. As a matter of fact, this coding academy that we're talking about, when I was foreign minister, I've already initiated the conversations with the Indian government, just as we did with the Taiwanese government to send us people to teach Mandarin. We want them initially to help us to send people to teach coding so that our young people. We also have plans in relation to develop so that the young people will have the necessary devices that they can use for coding. So we have a plan that we intend to lay out. And as I go back, I hope, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on August 6th, I will continue those discussions with the Indian government to get us on the path to get this sorted and put in place. Financial services, we continue to try and develop that. In fact, I am happy to report that we have just approved the 4th bank, international bank for Nevis, and it is my hope that they will come on stream. They're not large employers, meaning that they don't employ hundreds of people, at least not yet, but they do offer, generally speaking, higher paying jobs. And so it means that people who have degrees in accounting and finance and things like that now get an opportunity to earn at a significantly higher level. And every little bit helps. And so that is what we are also seeking to do in terms of expanding our financial services sector and growing that. So we have different strings to our bow. But part of it, Mr. Bart, and I end with this point, has to be food security. We have to do more in terms of agriculture. Agriculture can become big business here. Whether it's the broiler industry, the egg industry, as we have heard, other crops. I think our Ministry of Agriculture has identified 10 crops that we feel that we can become self-sufficient in. And that is the way I think we need to go. And as we do that, we also need to look outward to say to our farmers, can we send mangoes to Anguilla? Nevis has an abundance of those. Can we send things to St. Martin? We have already invested, for example, in pulping machines to get the mango pulp. Can we send thousands of pounds of pulp on a regular basis to service the hotel sector in Anguilla, the hotel sector in St. Martin, the hotel sector in Antigua? Because we have an inbuilt advantage, an inherent advantage in relation to mango and mango production. So these are some of the things that we have taken for granted over the years. I now think that we need to look at them in terms of job creation, job promotion, in terms of economic growth, and I think we can achieve it. So I've outlined a few things. There are more things, but certainly I think that we can emphasize going forward how we grow the economy and how we grow it and expand it at a rate that we can ensure that those who are coming here to Nevis and those who are coming out of school can find meaningful employment. Any other questions for me?
Hello, good morning all. Today I'm here representing BHC Media. Mr. Brantley, if successful at the next federal elections, what is your plan for constitutional reform, constitutional and electoral reform for St. Kitts and Nevis during the next 5 years? Question 2. The leader of the NRP, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, wrote to the Nevis Integrity in Public Life Commission asking for the investigation into the $120 million private hotel project owned by Minister Spencer Brand. The Integrity in Public Life Commission wrote back and said that they have no such powers to investigate a sitting minister of government. Question is, why did you draft and pass an Integrity in Public Life bill in Parliament that does not give the Commission powers to investigate a sitting minister? Don't you think that is a waste of taxpayers' money to be paying a commission with no powers to investigate? Question 3. Several days ago, a statue of Alexander Hamilton was erected in the heart of Charlestown, Nevis, which is the capital of the island of Nevis. This has since attracted mixed reaction from the Nevisian public. Question is, considering that Alexander Hamilton was a known slave owner and trader in Nevis, St. Croix, and the United States, and the island of Nevis is made up of a population of over 98% descendants of African enslaved people. Question is, why did you approve the erection of such a statue without any public discussions? Final question. You said that the island of St. Kitts does not pay any fuel surcharge, but Nevis does. Question, as the Minister of NEVLEC and a federal minister for the past 7 years, don't you think you should have submitted a proposal to the federal cabinet to ensure that the island of Nevis fuel surcharge is subsidized by the federal government? Thank you.
Mr. Hanley, thank you for your questions, as always. The last question, should I have submitted something to the cabinet? I don't know quite how to respond to that. That clearly was an option, to submit something to the cabinet federally. But the negotiations were always with the Office of the Prime Minister, between the Office of the Prime Minister and the Office of the Premier, about getting Nevis's fair share of the CBI proceeds. There would have been no need for us to submit anything about the fuel surcharge specifically, because the anticipation was that if Nevis got what belongs to Nevis, there would be no issue about fuel surcharge. In fact, the response that St. Kitts could have given was simply to say, well, we gave you what was agreed, and therefore you should have used it to subsidize the fuel surcharge if you so desired. But the reality is that we did not get what was agreed. And so those negotiations, and I have heard the red herring. In fact, Dr. Harris himself put that red herring out there about nothing came to the cabinet. Well, he should be careful what he says, because all the money that we've received, the same 400 million that he keeps talking about, none of that ever went to cabinet. So if he is to blame me for not bringing a cabinet submission, I am to ask him, on what authority did he send the checks over to Nevis amounting to some $400 million? So it really doesn't make any sense, because the entire discussion throughout has been an engagement between the Office of the Premier and the Office of the Prime Minister. Hamilton. I saw some chatter on the matter, Mr. Hanley, but I disagreed with some of the views, in fact, some of the extreme views that I saw. First of all, I am hearing now for the first time that Hamilton, in your words, was an owner and trader of slaves in Nevis, St. Croix, and the U.S. Hamilton left Nevis when he was 9 years old. I hardly doubt that he was trading slaves in Nevis as a 9-year-old. He moved to St. Croix and left down there as a teenager and moved to the U.S. There's a book written by a man called Chernoff, who at the time was considered to be the sort of seminal work on the life of Hamilton. And there was no suggestion that Hamilton owned slaves or was ever involved. In fact, he was described as one of the founding fathers who was opposed to slavery. And various publications have said, for example, that when Haiti obtained its independence and overthrew the French authorities, that Hamilton was one of the few voices in the U.S. that asked for Haiti to be recognized and for trade with Haiti to occur. I am not here to defend Hamilton because I confess I don't know enough of the history. I will leave that to historians. But there's been a recent article that I have seen, I believe in the Times, that suggests that there is some new evidence that has come to light that Hamilton may have had some involvement with the slave trade. And I suppose that that is the nature of history, that as new things come to light, there is new debate and new discussion. I am not in a position to opine one way or the other as to whether Hamilton owned slaves, whether he was involved in some way in the slave trade. He clearly existed, lived in a time when slavery was the norm. And I would expect that anybody who lived in that period of time would have come into contact with slavery in some way, shape, or form, because that was the norm of the day, reprehensible and despicable as it was. The issue about Hamilton and why a statue of Hamilton was permitted. First of all, I want to make it clear that there is no taxpayer money that was spent in relation to the statue, because I've heard that suggestion made. Not a penny of Nevis money was spent. This was entirely donated by a homeowner at the Four Seasons who thought that it would be a good addition to what is already a Hamilton installation in Nevis. And that is why, Mr. Hanley, the few persons I heard expressing some very strong views on the matter, I was a little surprised. You are aware, and everybody in this room is aware, that Alexander Hamilton was born in Nevis. He is Nevisian just like you and I. The Hamilton house has existed there for some time. In fact, considerable effort has been made to preserve that particular structure. The Hamilton Museum has been there for decades. In fact, since I was a child, and I have not been a child for a very long time. Hamilton has had a tea party, I think they call it, and they have made scholarships available to youngsters over the years. So, the birthplace of Hamilton has been preserved. Every year on January 11th, there is a tea party to remember Hamilton. Scores and scores, I'm told it's as many as 20 now, of children get scholarships each year from the Hamilton Foundation. And I see our people posting all the time, the flag, St. Kitts Nevis flag flying above Wall Street. That is done each year on Hamilton's birthday, January 11th. I say all that to say that the preservation of Hamilton and the name of Hamilton in relation to Nevis is nothing new. It has been with us for decades. I have never heard anybody say we should burn down the house that Hamilton was born in, or we should remove the name Hamilton from the museum. The children should not accept any scholarships from the Hamilton Foundation. And so all that we have done here is really to say, how can we buttress the economic advantages that we can get from those who are seeking to visit the birthplace of one of the American founding fathers. That is it. Since the hit musical Hamilton, the world is interested in Alexander Hamilton. People want to know more about him. People want to visit. And when I speak to the people at the museum there, it's managed by the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society, they say that the numbers of visitors has gone up several hundredfold in terms of who are coming there now as a consequence of the resurgence of Hamilton's name through this massive musical Hamilton. Now, if there is an opportunity for our taxi drivers to do a bit more business, for the museum to make a little money as well, for our hotels to have guests who are coming here because they want to go and see the birthplace of Hamilton, for our fishermen to sell a few more lobsters and fish to the hotels, for our farmers to sell a bit more produce to the hotels, and for the consumption and the activity in the country that can flow from an installation such as this. I believe that that is why we took that decision, that it did no disservice to Nevis to have an installation on the same site, Mr. Handy, as we have recognized all these years as Hamilton's birthplace. We did not take it and put it in the center of Charlestown on Main Street. We put it where the man was born and where we are told by the history books that he was born. And whether we like it or not, Hamilton was a gift from Nevis to the United States. People argue and say, oh, Hamilton did nothing for Nevis. And some of the commentators on social media saying that, I smiled because most of them were commenting from a foreign country. Means to me, therefore, that they recognize that just like Hamilton, they are immigrants making their contribution elsewhere. And nothing is wrong with that. People come here and make their contribution. Paul Southwell, a former premier, was not from St. Kitts Nevis. I'm told he was from Dominica. But he became premier of St. Kitts Nevis and Anguilla, or chief minister, whatever it was called at the time. So, Mr. Hanley, I think we need to move past some of the emotional rhetoric and focus on what the reality is. And I'm not going to get into a debate about slavery because it's an emotional debate. But if Hamilton did not contribute to Nevis during his lifetime, and the island can now benefit from him because of the contribution he made to the great United States of America, I feel that it is a contribution that we should embrace. He is the vision, and he made his contribution to the founding of the greatest country the world has ever seen. And I made the case, the few words I spoke at the unveiling, and I have made the case before, and I will continue to make the case, that the people of Nevis should have visa-free access to the United States. Because we have that umbilical cord going back over 250 years with America and the founding of America. How many countries in the world, far less a small island our size, could say that they contributed so significantly to the founding of the United States of America? The answer is none. So the issue about history and who was Hamilton and what did Hamilton do is important. But we also know what he did in forging this United States of America and writing the Federalist Papers, starting the U.S. Coast Guard. He's credited for being the architect of the U.S. financial system that is not used only in the United States. 2.5 centuries later, it is also used throughout the world. And Nivision did that. So should we ignore and say he's not relevant because perhaps he was white? Or he's not relevant because a recent article says that there is some contact that he might have had with slavery, despite the fact that earlier scholarly works have said that he was the only founding father who never owned slaves and found slavery abhorrent. I saw something recently where, again, some writer suggests that he was actually born in St. Eustatius. Statia, they say something had come to light suggesting he was born in Statia. But we have always known that Hamilton was born here in Nevis. So history is what it is, and people are going to continually say they found new evidence of this, they've pieced together that. I had to respond to what the NHCS brought, Nevis Historical and Conservation Society. A statue was being donated, and it was to be put on the grounds where the man was born. And that was the decision that was taken. And I'm to hope that our people would see, because I sometimes go there and sit and have a coffee, and I have noticed the multitude of people who are coming in and taking pictures with that statue. Where do you think those pictures are going to go? They're going to post them on Instagram, they're going to post them on Facebook, and every one of those people now becomes another ambassador for Nevis in terms of getting the word out. Oh, you went to the hit musical Hamilton, come to Nevis. There's a beautiful statue here of Hamilton as a young man. This is where he was born. He's on the $10 bill, the US $10 bill. Hamilton is an asset. And I want our people to see it as such. All those who are saying he didn't contribute anything in his lifetime, well, let him now contribute in his death. He's an asset. And assets are supposed to pay dividends. And that is what we're seeking to do. So I am not, as I said, Mr. Hanley, equipped to engage in which history or which version of history is correct. I am not equipped to engage in a lot of what the emotional debate is like. But I find it interesting that those perched abroad are saying to us that Hamilton made no contribution to Nevis, because they themselves are making their contribution to their countries that they've adopted and the countries that are abroad. Integrity in public life, you said that the leader of NRP wrote, and you asked, you said that the commission wrote back to say they had no power to investigate members of government. I don't think that that's what the commission actually said. I believe that they said they had no power to investigate the specific issue that was being raised. And I agree with the commission because I don't know what the issue is, to put it bluntly. The record will show that Mr. Brand and his wife bought some land in 2008. Private land, not government land. They bought land with a loan that they took from a private bank here. Well, they're entitled, any vision. Mr. Hanley, I'm sure if you bought a piece of land, you paid for it. So what is the objection to that? You are a man who ran for office. So if you bought your land and you develop your plans for your land, you and your family, and you went through a process of approval for your development, and all of that happened before you got elected into office, are you suddenly now corrupt? What did you do that is corrupt? I am yet to understand. Because there's been no allegation that Mr. Brand acquired anything while he was in government. They have said, for example, that Mr. Brand applied to the Citizenship by Investment Unit in order to get shares, to use that CBI to develop, well, the Four Seasons did the same thing. Dion Daniel has done the same thing. Greg Hartman has done the same thing. So are we saying that if any of those developers were tomorrow decide they want to run for office and were elected, that by virtue of doing so makes them corrupt? And that is the difficulty that I had. It was clearly a concocted story. And that is the problem that I'm having with my friends in the NRP. That whatever Dr. Harris jumps up and says, they run with it. And don't stop to evaluate what is being said, because we all know that the only reason Spencer Brand's project was referenced was to deflect attention from the $2.5 billion jail that is being erected in St. Kitts. The only reason. And we ran with it up here. Not interested in the fact that $2.5 billion has been allocated through 5,500 citizenships for a jail. But we start to run with this thing about Spencer. And I am yet to understand. And so I agree with the commission. Matter of fact, if I were the commission, I would have just written back a letter and say noted. Because I don't know what else they really expected from the commission. And if the NRP and its leader had informed itself of the legislation. But this was a public relations exercise. This letter was copied to everybody because the idea was, let us create something. Let us start something about a scandal. And I am surprised that it is the leader of the NRP who would have done that. She should have given that job to somebody else. And not invited scrutiny of her own conduct and behavior. So, if you've been listening to the election campaign, Mr. Hanley, I'm sure you would have heard that questions are being asked of her in terms of her role at the time when she lived in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I will not get into that in this press conference because I'm getting into it on the platform. But if I were her, I would be quiet about any allegations about people when there are certainly questions that need to be asked and answered in relation to her herself. So I have no doubt. I tell people all the time that my knowledge of Mr. Brand is that he's a choir master at the Anglican Church in Charleston. And when I go, I don't know if he can sing, but he certainly waves the wand quite effectively. What's it called, a wand? Yeah? That you use to get the choir going? The constitutional reform, I think, Mr. Hanley, that's an excellent question. And I think that this particular period has shown that we do need constitutional reform in a significant way. Each party has campaigned over the decades and said that constitutional reform is at the top of the agenda. Nobody has done anything about it to date. But when I reflect that the Constitution does not speak about the election of a prime minister, the Constitution speaks to the selection of a prime minister, because all of us are running in constituencies. And so when we run on the 5th of August, all of us are created equal. And those who win are described as representatives because we have won a constituency. It is a majority of those elected representatives who then select a prime minister. You know, in the United States, Mr. Hanley, somebody runs for president. There's no such system here. And the legitimacy of the prime minister comes from the fact that he or she has the support of the elected majority. That is why, after every election, the Governor General should call elected members and ask them, do you support so-and-so to be prime minister? Because the Constitution requires that he or she, as Gigi, be satisfied that the person being sworn in as prime minister has the support of the elected majority. Now it follows, Mr. Hanley, that if to become prime minister you need the support of the elected majority because they are the ones who select you as prime minister, then if that support is withdrawn, then the legitimacy is also withdrawn. Because if you no longer have the support of the elected majority, then it falls to reason that the very characteristic that you must have to refer to yourself as prime minister has been lost. And that is why we took legal advice from a seasoned Queen's Counsel, Sir Geoffrey Robertson QC in the UK. And that advice was that the Governor General had the ability to act. And so 6 elected members wrote to him to say that we no longer supported Timothy Harris as Prime Minister, and that we were now prepared to support Sean Richards as Prime Minister. But we had a majority. The Governor General wrote back to say he had no authority to entertain us. So we found it a matter of curiosity that thereafter he entertained the man who no longer had the support of the majority, and that man instructed him to fire the majority. So I like to listen to people, you know, in the rum shops and on the sidewalks and as we go around the villages, because they sometimes can break down complex situations very easily. And one youngster said to me, so 6 can't fire 1, but 1 fire 6. And I think that that is something that we need to change. We need to put it in the Constitution so that it is clear that where a prime minister loses confidence, the country does not have to go back into an election. Once the head of state is satisfied that somebody else has that support, then we should be able to make that shift. Midterm, look at this. We're not even halfway through a term, and we're going back to the polls. All because one man has decided, if I am not the prime minister, then the ship must be sunk. If I am not the captain, the ship must run aground. And we must guard against that. And if we have a Governor General who is not prepared to act, despite the advice, then we must put it in black and white in the Constitution. So these are areas, I think, that our recent history has shown need to be adjusted and need to be looked at. So I agree with you that constitutional reform is critical. We have to look at it. We have to look at the revenue sharing mechanisms between St. Kitts and Nevis. We have to consider whether it is time now for St. Kitts to have a St. Kitts Island administration, just as Nevis has a Nevis Island administration. And there's a considerable amount of work that has gone into this already. I think there was a report by Sir Fred Phillips, if I recall. Sir Lee Moore, QC of blessed memory, would have written something in place of strife on the occasion of our attaining independence in 1983, where he made some suggestions. Perhaps it is time that we revisit all of the scholarly works that have been done, because this relationship has been struggling for many, many decades, and I believe it is time that we seek to fix it. I believe that I have covered the question you asked, Mr. Hanley. Is there anything further for me? Ladies and gentlemen, okay, thank you very much. I can now put on my blue clothes and go on campaign. I want to thank you all for coming, thank NTV for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in another month. And in that month's time, I will, with God's grace, still be here as Premier. And hopefully I'll be able to introduce myself with other language as well. So thank you all very much. And on August 5th, I'm sorry, I'm encouraging everyone to go out and vote. Exercise your franchise. It is an important thing to do. Go out and exercise your vote. And of course, this weekend is the final big weekend for Culturama. I'm inviting you to go out as well and be a part of Culturama. And then join me in the long jam from Gingerland to town. Mr. Hanley, I hope you'll be there. That long jam. We will end in town. We will have certainly some Gatorade and some energy drinks for you. So I know you don't engage in other things, so we'll have that for you. And we will come down and have a good time. So thank you all very much. We look forward to a safe Culturama, and we look forward to a safe election on the 5th of August. I will see you on the next occasion. Thank you and God bless you.